So hey everyone, thank you so much for joining today's episode 8. And today we are going to take our first step towards how we can integrate Salesforce uh, with the external system using REST API. Can someone confirm if my voice is clear?
Yes, it is.
Awesome, thank you. So about myself, I'm Jitendra Jha. I am a Salesforce MVP, Senior Technical Architect, and you can follow me on my Twitter handler, which is Jitendra Jha. First of all, I would like to congratulate everybody who is showing an interest and earning as much as badges they can. And this is the latest snapshot we have around 30 minutes back. So these are like top 5 who are earning badges, and these badges count are actually weak in our curriculum. So Vicky, she earned like 97 badges in last 8 weeks. I would argue and I would suggest all of you to proceed and earn as much as badges as you can. And where you can subscribe and all that. If you have any question, we can discuss at the end of this meeting. So what we are going to talk today is what is JSON, what is API, what is REST API, and what are some different tool and mechanism which we can use to integrate Salesforce with external system. And as usual, some of our house rule, please keep your mic mute if you're not speaking. Keep asking question as much as you can in Zoom window. Don't worry about any type of question. We will try to answer all of those questions, and we'll try to reserve last 15 minutes to answer these questions. So let's talk about basic of JSON. So as the word suggests, JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. So this is kind of one of the format or data type that we use to exchange data. This is language independent, and we can kind of represent any type of object, simple object, complex one that we will see in some time. There are many parsers available and there are many languages which are almost supporting JSON as a first language if they want to transfer some data, and we will see why. And this is the best or nearest alternative, I will say, to the XML. So for the long time, in past few decades, we have used an XML if we want to integrate multiple system. But slowly, as a best practice, we all are moving towards JSON, and we will talk about that why that's happening. One of the important advantage about JSON is it can be transmitted over the HTTP or HTTPS, like the browser or all other tools. So let's compare side by side how XML and the JSON will look like. So as you can see, if I want to represent person here, so I have to have open tag and end tag. Then I have to have my first name, last name, those are again an attribute. If I want to represent same information in the JSON, all I have to do is curly bracket that JSON needs to start. And JSON is normally represented as a key and value pair. So key, I'm saying first name, which is foo, last name as a bar. Now this is a very small example, but just to show you, even in this small example, we can see the difference. There are repeated tags in JSON, sorry, in XML. So if you can see person tag and person tag is repeated unnecessary. First name and first name, for starting tag and ending tag, those are repeated. So the question is, why are we worried about those repetition? What is the problem with verbose? The real problem here is if we are repeating these tags, that means these are an extra character. And when you are transferring data between two systems, most of the time you are using internet. That means you are using a lot of internet bandwidth just to transfer the data. For most high speed internet, or if your system is high speed, that's not a problem, but let's assume your mobile phone. So you are on a mobile phone and you're trying to make some call out to the external system, and external system is unnecessarily sending that huge amount of the character, how the performance or how the experience of the mobile app would be. So that is one of the important reason or I will say the first reason is to reduce the number of characters or the size that equivalent XML takes. So that is one of the biggest advantage of JSON in today's world. So few we already talked on the previous slide, right? XML is verbose, too much information there, and more size equivalent to JSON because we have a repeated tag. Now JSON is very simple to understand, and JSON is actually recommended for devices with low processing power or slow internet. Now the REST is a very common technique of integration, and that supports JSON widely. REST and JSON are like music to the internet. Both normally go hand in hand. And most of the major companies like Google, Yahoo, DNB, right? Those kind of companies, they normally expose their web services in JSON, and of course in XML also in some of the cases if they have their old system to manage. So the question is how much time it will need to learn a JSON? My answer is this slide. Just understand this slide and you will know all important information you need to learn JSON. So basically, like I said, JSON is always key and the value pair. And if anything you see in the curly bracket square, that means it's an object. If anything you see in the square bracket, that means it is an array. And different values or different objects are separated by comma. And overall, JSON supports 4 data types, which is a Boolean, number, string, object. And if, of course, if you consider array, then an array would be the 5th. So this slide is pretty important one. You understand this slide and you will understand JSON, how things work. So if you go back on our previous slide, so here, curly bracket, that means this is an object. First name is a key, colon, value. And two value we are separated using comma. Now they are in double quotes, that means they are string. Let me show some another example here of the JSON. So there are multiple editors available online, and one of the editor is this one, jsoneditoronline.org. And if you so this is a ready-made JSON I got from internet. So like JSON starts with a square bracket, curly bracket. Key is quiz. Now quiz contains an object. So anything which is a curly bracket is an object. Now inside quiz, there are sport. Again, sport contains another object because it's a curly bracket. Then the question one, Q1 again contains curly bracket. That means it's an object. And then actual comes question. What is a question? Question is a single string. What are the options? So option we can see it's a array of string and then the answer. So very simple to understand, right? That okay, we have a quiz, category is sport, category is maths. There are questions, and these are question text. These are an option, and this is the right answer. So this is how, if you see the combination we are having, everywhere this is object, this is an array, and all that different key and value, they are separated by comma. So this is one of the simple example of JSON. And as you can see, it's actually a little bit complex. So quiz, nested, sport, and then sport has a Q1 has a question. So as you can imagine, that level complex it can go. At the same time, it looks pretty easier. And if you see the right hand side of this tool, it will give you on non-JSON format just to understand that what are there. So let's go back on our slides. So there are multiple ways to process the JSON, and if you think that this is the JSON first name and the last name, and if you want to have an equivalent Apex class, it would be very simple. So it would be something like you create a class named person, you create a variable named first name. First name is going to have a value of type string, and that's a public. Same ways, you create a variable named last name data type is string and public. And we will come, so basically today's session, right, we are not going to cover exactly this one, but we are going to cover how you can make a call out to the external system. So let's skip this right now. So here, if you have this string, let's assume, and you want to convert this JSON string to this class, all you have to do is use the existing method which is system.json.deserialize, provide your JSON string. In our case, this is the JSON string content, and all you have to do is person.class. So let's see a quick demo here. I am going to create a person class. Okay. So I will say episode person, and all I have to do here now is you just need these two parameters. Now what I will do is I will just have a string sample in place. Wait, I copied the wrong one. So this is the string I need to have, and I will remove extra characters from here. So let's see if we want to convert this JSON string to the equivalent class which is written behind. All we have to do is let's try to understand what that does mean is. So basically, some problem in my shortcuts. Okay, so basically what we are saying is we need to convert this string to the equivalent this class episode 8 person, and the return type of system.json deserialize is this. Okay, and now Salesforce doesn't know, right, what is going to be the return type. So we have to tell compiler that, hey, its return type is this. So this concept is known as a typecasting. If you don't write this, let me show. Okay, so if you don't write this, what the compiler is going to throw an error, because the return type of this as an object, we are expecting this. And like I always said, if compiler is throwing an error, that's the good news, right? Because we know during writing the code itself that this is not going to work on the production. Chances are high that it is going to break on production. So as a best practice, we will typecast it, and let's try to have system.debug D. I will say D dot first name, because we know that's the parameter. D dot last name. So we just executed it, and if I want to see my debug log, it clearly says that foo and bar. Now the reason why I'm showing this example is just to show how powerful Salesforce is, right? Now this sample can come from externally, and we will talk about there in some few moments. But the important thing to understand is this class. Whatever the response you get from the external system using this, you don't have to worry about this format, right? Of course it does look scary, right? So why should you worry about, I have to go to quiz, then I have to go to the sport and Q1 and then question. All you have to do is just create a class framework and let Salesforce serialize it for you. and let convert it to the class, and then you can have your method, parameter, and access it accordingly. So that is the advantage of Salesforce JSON deserialized method, and this is the class. There are so many other methods available here, right? Serialize and deserialize, that you can go and look into. So same way, you can convert string to class and class to the JSON as well. So let's say if you're integrating with some system and they want JSON, you have a class, then you all have to use another API. Instead of JSON.deserialize, we would need to use JSON.serialize. So let's move on to the next one. And let's try to understand first what is REST, what is an integration, right? We directly, so right now all I have shown you is what is JSON and how to convert JSON to an object. Now the question is, how do we get the JSON, right? So let's talk about first what is API. Okay, now the API's full form is application programming interface. Now this is really a 101 of integration. Let's assume you have a Salesforce in your company, of course, and then you have Oracle Cloud, you have SAP, and you have, let's say, Google Map or some external services. Now all these systems are built on different technologies. Salesforce is cloud-based, Oracle is cloud-based, SAP, some component is on the on-premises, some is cloud-based, right? Now the question is, how are you going to get record, how you are going to give record to this system, and how you are going to read record from this system, right? Oracle might be a background Java, Google is built on some other platform, everything is built on other platform. What is the common language to communicate to each other? And that common language or the specification where Salesforce says, hey, I will give you this and you give me back, is known as API in a simple layman term, which is application programming, how you are going to interface between these two systems. Now, API can be either SOAP based or REST based. Now, agenda of this session, we are only going to talk about REST based. Next session, we are going to talk about what is SOAP and all those stuff. Now, the question is, what is REST? So now we understood API. API is the common terminology or common agreement between multiple systems, right? Now the question is, in this agreement, what is REST API? So the REST stands for representational state transfer, okay? And basically REST consists of, so how do you make a REST API? So first and foremost, in most of the company, right, you have to authenticate that, okay, you are going to use their API. So for an example, Google Map. Now Google Map does expose the API, but of course, Google is not going to allow each and everybody to go on Google Map and get all the information they want, right? Because that can cause a lot of security issue, one. Second, how the Google is going to make the profitability, right? How Google is going to make money. So what Google will do is, Google will set up a process, billing process. Hey, you pay me XYZ amount per month, and I will allow you to come to my system and make maybe XYZ number of API hit, maybe millions of API hit per month, those kind of. So authentication is always number one. Second is, we have to make a request. So Salesforce will go to Google, Google will return a response. Now, when the Google is not going to return a response different for everybody, right? For an example, right, you purchase an iPhone, right? Whatever iPhone is coming up with, you use that. Anything extra we need, we install our apps. Same way, Google is going to send a response. Now, Salesforce can directly consume that response, or Salesforce might need to process that response. Google Map may be returning 25 attribute, we need only 2 attribute, right? So overall in integration, these are the 3 concepts. On the request, how we can make request and get response. We are not going to focus how to authenticate and how to process response, because these 2 methods will always vary from vendor to vendor or from system to system. So the question is, when the Salesforce is making this request, what is the 101 of those requests? So there can be only 4 type of the request in any integration anybody can make. That is a get request. That means, okay, I want some information. Post request means, okay, I want to create something. Put request, I want to update a resources in your system, and the delete request. So for an example, let's say you want to make an API to Salesforce system, and you want to say, hey, I want to create an opportunity. That would be post. I want to update an opportunity. That would be put. I want to see the list of all opportunity. That would be get. And I want to delete one opportunity, which is a delete. So these are the basic 4 type of the request we can make in any REST API. So let's talk about one example, right? So one of the example is, let's say we want to find a stock rate. So let's say, what is the stock rate of IBM today, right? So just like that, there are hundreds of free APIs available in the market. One of the API available is this one. Okay. So the alphavantage.co. So this is we are going to use in our today's example. And what it has is, on the left, you can see there are a lot of APIs available. You can have information about intraday. So this is all about stock. What I want to do is I want to search a stock using this API, and stock will return me all the information about what was the price, highest price, lowest price, right? And that ticker symbol belongs to which company. And this is just an example, right? Let's say you have in your org, right? In your org, let's say you want to integrate task management, or let's say you want to have a real-time dictionary, right? Or let's say you want to have automatic Wikipedia post appearing, or some news channel, news information appearing, right? Indirectly, what we have the scenario here is Salesforce wants to get a data from external system, and that's where the REST API or integration comes into the picture. Okay, so let's see what we can leverage today. So one of the tool, one of the API I see is search. So basically we can search for some ticker symbol. This is an example. And if you see, if we hit this example, right, it would return. So what we would need to get an API key. It is very easy. And I just have my API key ready. I will go back here. Okay, and I will copy this. Now the question is, how should I test it? So I will go on the Salesforce. So just like a Lego, right? You have to build blocks step by step, slowly, right? We are new to Salesforce. Let's assume we don't know it is going to work in Salesforce or not. Before building or before creating any code inside Salesforce, we need to know this really works or doesn't work. So for that, we have a tool named as a curl. And you can install curl if you search on Google. And let me see if so on the next slide number 18, I have provided the URL curl. I have provided URL for Postman, which we will talk. So let's talk about curl first. So let's assume that you have downloaded curl. Okay, all now we have to do is just make a curl request. And what I will do is let me open my terminal. Okay, so all we have to do is curl. Curl is a program which I have installed on my system to make sure that I am able to communicate to this or not. I have my API key. So if you see this information, right, this is the easiest authentication you can do anytime. So if you see my slide here, in this slide I say that first step is always to authenticate. There are n number of ways to authenticate, and the service which owns the API normally decides that how many ways you can authenticate. Fortunately for us, the website Alpha Vintage allowed us to just provide this API key. I got this API key, and let's say I'm searching for symbol IBM. Let's see if this is going to work or not. So as you can see, this API did return me a valid value. I search for IBM. It is going me highest price value, lowest value, right? Current price and all the other information, right? And the latest trending day was today's date. So basically using free API without investing a single money, I am able to get the important information. Now all I have to do is display this information in a way I want in my Salesforce org. Let's try to search some other symbol. Let's try to search some invalid one, how it looks like. So it returned empty body, right? Let's try to research CR. Now, as you can see, CRM is a symbol for Salesforce. So it will show you the stock price of Salesforce. So this is one of the tool which we can leverage, which is widely used. So whenever you talk about integration, you will be hearing this either from developer or an architect. Hey, have you used a curl, or did you curl it? So this makes sure that okay, this URL is valid. Whatever the information we are providing is valid. Now we can go ahead and we can code in Salesforce whatever the way we want to do it. Now another way to do it is a tool named as a Postman. So if you go on my slide, the another URL which I have here is a Postman URL. So now using Postman also, I can make a REST API and see how the things work, and I can play with all the parameter and everything. Let me, I have installed, I have downloaded and installed Postman already. Now this is the nice way to test it. You don't, if you're not familiar, you're not comfortable with this curl or the command line, no worries. You can close this. Now the curl is GUI based tool, one of the widely tool used right now in the market. All you have to do is provide the URL. So as you can see, right, I provided all the URL and curl automatically broke it. So it automatically extracted it. Okay, function is global code. That's what we provided. Symbol, we are searching IBM and this API key. Now, all I have to do in Postman now is just send the information. And now I can see a nice representation of what reply I am going to get from the API. Now, as you can see, the return type is JSON, right? Let me see if I get, no, it's not. So as I said, right, most of the REST API implemented supports a JSON format. Now, the party or the provider, right, they can also support XML. So if we go on the API documentation, so if you see, right, they are giving a JSON, they are giving a CSV. Let me see if they are giving some XML information. No. So basically this API does not support XML. Most of the API, whenever you integrate, they supports both XML as well as JSON, and mostly we go with the JSON format. If I again go back and I change IBM to CRM and send it, so as you can see, again, it is coming as a nice UI format. So that's all about Postman. That's about curl. These are the two tools which we should always use first before writing any code in Salesforce, just to make sure that are we even able to hit the APIs. Normally, in my experience, you will hit a roadblock in the step one itself, right? Because Salesforce is on cloud, API also needs to be on the cloud version, right? Most of the time, clients have the API behind their firewall. You're not even able to make the connection, right? So instead of investing a lot of time getting or making sure that API is going to work in Salesforce or not, the best practice is always hit APIs using one of these tools. And then the last step is Apex code. Okay. So I am going to make exactly same API, what I did with curl, what I did with Postman using Apex, and see if I'm able to get exactly same response. Okay. So let me copy this code. So there is an HTTP class we have in Salesforce, and then we have HTTP request class. So this is the endpoint. So endpoint means the URL which we are going to hit. So in our case, so any API provider, if let's say you want to integrate with Facebook, or let's say if you want to integrate with Twitter, you have to go to their website, their documentation, and try to understand what we need to do in order to get the right answer. So in this case, they are clearly saying, right, this is the endpoint URL we have to use. So it's www.alphavantage.co query, what are the function, keyword, and API, right? So if you follow the same syntax, this is the endpoint URL. If I go back on my developer console, so that's the step, line number 3. Line number 4 is what is the method we are going to use. So like we discussed, we have overall 4 methods. We have get, we have post, put, and delete. We are saying, hey, we need to get an information. Okay, so that's a get. Okay, and next line. Now we are going to actually, so that we are going to use, and we are going to send a request. Whatever the response we get, we are using a method response.getBody. Now the question is, how do I know that these methods exist? How do I know I have to use http.send? How do I know that response.getBody method is there, right? It's very simple. All we have to do is go to the Salesforce documentation, Apex Developer Guide, search for HTTP. So as you can see, 3 classes came back: HTTP class, request, and response. And as you can see, sample code is here. That okay, you have to instantiate HTTP, you have to make a request, you have to send a request, and then you will get a response. We are using exactly same code. The only difference is our URL now changed. Okay. So once I get the response of body, and let's execute this. So the question, the error I'm getting right now, right? It's pretty straightforward error, unauthorized endpoint. And like for Salesforce, trust and the security is always a highest priority. If your org has it, if in your org, let's say on the production, some developers are there, right? Just to avoid any security or any issue, what Salesforce suggests is you have to approve this endpoint in order to make an API call, so that any unauthenticated, because you can send any data also, right? Think about it. Right now, what we are sending, we are just sending symbol, right? What I can do is I can query an opportunity, right? I can say opportunity OPP, that's existing record, select some record, right? And whatever the response I got from opportunity, I can say, let's say instead of opportunity, let's say there is account or something, and all I can say is, okay, I have federal account ID saved here, say app.federal account ID, or FedEx TIN number, right? Or tax identification number. So basically someone may be unauthorized or can send the information to the external system. You want to avoid that. So all we have to do now to fix this error is let everybody know that this Salesforce org is authorized to send an information to the external endpoint. Thus again, security, you have to be very careful. So I will go on the remote site settings. So you have to go to the admin setup. You will come on this page, go on the remote site setting. Now you have to approve it. So you are saying, okay, stock, I will say free stock API. And this is the URL which we are going to get. Okay, and let's save it. No space, fine. Now we have authorized. Now everybody know that this Salesforce can go to this API and request, upgrade, whatever it wants to do. I'm back on my developer console. Now I'm executing. got my log. Let's open the raw log. And as you can see, it returned multiple result because I search for word BA. So there are multiple companies which matches word BA. That is the reason I got a multiple result. If I change BA by CRM and let's execute it, open the raw log. Okay, this demo key. So there is a restriction. They are saying that I cannot use that API key. That's completely fine. I have the right API key, or maybe I can just copy this URL because I know that this works, and that is the reason we need to test everything in Postman or curl before making any work in Salesforce instead of spending so much time in Salesforce. Now I can go back, I can change my code. Instead of this, I need this one. Okay, let's try to hit now. I can open login, and now as you can see, I am getting a proper information from the external system. So congratulations everyone, we just integrated Salesforce with external system by writing how many lines of code? Around 7 lines of code. That's easy. That was the 101. Of course, there would be complexity, there would be more scenario, one solution never fits all, those kind of stuff. But this is the basic concept, which would help you to go again on more detail, more complexity. But this is how easy in Salesforce to make a call out just in 7 lines of code. We are getting exactly same output that we got in Postman and that we got in the curl. Okay. So that's all. We are done with our sample code. If you want to learn more, my suggestion is by next week, try to finish these 2 badges on the trailhead. One is Apex Integration Services and one is Lightning Platform API Basics. Both badges will explain a little bit more what I explained today about the REST API. It will go a little bit more detail on how the responses return, how to parse JSON, how to parse JSON with classes, without classes. So this will help you to grab some more information. Resources, API, this free API, right, that we used. This is the URL. You can go ahead and you can play with this. Then how to do JSON serialization and all stuff. So let's go back on question and answer. I see some questions are here, and I will go one by one there. Okay. Can you explain the difference between SOAP and the REST? When would you use one versus another in general? Very good question, Andrian. So let's go back on that slide. Here. So SOAP was the original way. So like I said, from the last 2-3 decades, the integrations which we did using on the basis of SOAP. So this SOAP is XML based and the REST API is JSON based. The preference now in terms of security, right? There is no problem in the security. If someone is saying the SOAP is more secure and someone is saying the REST is no, both can share the same security infrastructure. Both can be authenticated using OAuth or saying OAuth, I will say, or the certification based. The advantage is in XML or SOAP based, you will have agreement beforehand. So just for an example, we did this, right? If you, what will happen if you don't write this? You will get an error while writing this code. Same is going to happen with SOAP. So in SOAP, you already know what format you need to give a request. You already know what format of the response you would be getting. That's complete. That's the complete contract you have to follow. Okay, that is the scenario where you are going to use a SOAP API. Now, in that comparison, right, SOAP API is, I will say, a little bit heavier. Like I said, it's an XML, then you have to generate an Apex classes and stuffs. and it takes more time to implement SOAP based integration. So for an example, in our developer console, we did REST API in 7 line of code. Let's assume that same API is available in the SOAP. Instead of writing 7 line of code, you have to generate stubs. You don't have a session, but that's certainly not 7-line code. Those are like around 100 lines of code, including all the stub and everything minimum. Okay. The preference of the REST API normally is if you are building a mobile application or where speed is very important, you want to process the request and response fast, then you should REST API. Normal best practice world, the preference should always be given to the REST API because it is always to build, always it is easy to build, easy to manage, and easy to process. So almost everybody is going on the REST API side. Okay. So now Craig asking, there is an API license for you can buy from when the user is professional. Is this the only solution as a professional? What would be the difference? Thanks. So Craig, your question is right. So if you want to integrate, right, of course, you need to have a coding capability. In the professional edition, I do know that you cannot write a code. There is a concept of external services. Okay. I will suggest you, Craig, to explore that. Our external services session is next week. If you see our calendar, this week was a REST API. Next week, we are talking about SOAP API. And next to that, we are going to talk about external services. I'm not pretty positive, but we need to see if external services is supported in professional edition or not. This is another way of integration without writing a single line of code. Next question. How does the JSON nesting works with regard to deserialization to a class? Is it the same method used regardless? Okay, good question. So let's assume that I have to do the nesting. So this was very simple example, right? That I have a class person and I have first name, last name. What will happen if I have JSON something like okay. What if I have something like this? That's the question. Okay. Straight. Let's say state. It's just an example. G. Question is, how can we write exactly this in Apex format, right? So let's assume that I have to implement this. This is a nesting of JSON, right? First name, last name, then I have an address. In Salesforce, what you would need to do is you would need to create a class. You can have a class here as well. You can say public class address, and it is going to have, let's say, public string, let's say street, and let's say public string, let's say state. Only 2 parameters I have. Now all you have to do is you can have this class here, or you can create a new class by going public new here. The important part is this one. Now you have to say public address type of class is there, and you have to say something like this, ADD. For let's say the JSON is, let's say ADD. So this is going to be the right class. This is how you are going to nest it. So what you are saying is first name, last name is very simple, but address is the complex data type because address itself is going to have street and state. So then for each nesting, you have to keep creating the classes. Okay. Next question, Suman, you another question. What exactly is mean? Yeah, thank you, Suman, for answer. Endpoint means the URL which we are going to hit. API key of demo doesn't, yeah. So like we said, right? In this case, this API key demo will only work for this keyword. If you want other, all you have to do is just go back here. Where can we can get API. Okay, here, you see this line, your API, claim your free API here. Just go here, provide all your information. The time you click on the get free API, it will give you that string. In my case, that string is this one. This is working fine. If anybody wants to use this one, you can go ahead and use. Let me ping this key to all of you here. Okay. In my case, let me quickly correct the code because I'm going to share this all of you. This. I will fix the format later. That's fine. Next question. I am reading the question from Craig. Yeah, so Craig, you are asking, yeah, that's a good question. From the consulting point of view, right? You are asking is, why should I use the different licensing, right? Different type of the Salesforce licenses, or basically the editions, right? We have enterprise edition, we have unlimited edition, we have professional edition. So I can't comment that on that much, right? Salesforce has clearly indicated, right? If you don't want to write a single line of code, go ahead with the professional edition, right? But if you do need to write a code like what we are discussing today, then you might end up paying more, or I am not sure, I need to do a little bit more research that external services is supported by professional edition or not. That we need to check. I see question related to Wisdal. Yes, that's right. To write any, so question coming from Craig, how do you write a managed packages? Managed packages needs to be written in the developer edition, and that is a free of cost, Craig. So write your managed package there. You can either publish it on App Exchange, earn some money, or you publish it privately and still distribute to all your customer and client. Good questions coming up, team. Anyone, any other question? Some. So I think we wrapped up early today. Next episode is going to be how we are going to make a SOAP call out. We are going to talk about WSDL, XML and everything.